Badwater is a good map, and arguably one of the greatest maps Valve has ever introduced to Team Fortress 2. I mean really, what isn't there to love about a bit of PL Badwater? Its payload, which tends to be optimal for casual play, it's very well designed, leading to a fair and balanced playing experience, and there's potential for some insane movement across the map. I mean, it's a certified TF2 classic, simple as that. But would I say it is the best map in TF2? Well, the short answer is no, and hey, I see where that curse is going. I know what was in the thumbnail, alright, but just give me one chance, okay? Just sway your opinion on a map you probably haven't played on in like a year and a half, and you're gonna call me crazy for even mentioning it in the best map of all time discussion. But I'm gonna do it anyway, because this map deserves literally all the love and attention this damn world has to offer. In my humble opinion, the best map of all time in Team Fortress 2 is CP Steel. Yeah, you heard me right. It's not Upward, not Sunshine, not Borneo, it is CP Steel. Now I imagine a lot of you are sitting down and looking at your screen in absolute disbelief right now, because the only thing you probably know about this map is that it seems to explode the brains of every new player who steps foot in it. And you would be right. I think part of the reason why this map gets literally no attention is because people are put off by what is probably the highest skill floor of any map in TF2, due to how unique and unfortunately confusing its concept is. And I really want to change that, because once you learn how Steel actually functions, you will soon realize that it offers players some of the most dynamic and strategic gameplay out of any map in TF2. But alright, let's get into unpacking this map, starting from the very beginning. Just like Dust Bowl, Gorge, or Mountain Lab, Steel is considered an attack-defend map, which at its core requires the red team to defend a series of points for a certain amount of time from the blue team. Generally, these points have to be captured in a certain order. Like if you think of Dust Bowl, you have to first capture point A, before your team is allowed to progress towards point B. Now there are some variations within attack defend that shake up this formula a little bit, as we have maps like Egypt, which require the blue team to progress through 3 entirely different stages to win. We have something like Gravel Pit, or God forbid Junction, where you have to capture points A and B before you can progress onto the final point. And even the Groot Keep, for all you medieval enthusiasts, technically has its own spin on attack defend too. But if you have a keen eye, you probably would have noticed that there is a common thread running between all these variations of attack defend, and that is to capture the final point and ultimately win the round, you have to first capture one or more other points. It makes sense, because it gives the red team another opportunity to set up a defense, making it a lot harder for the blue team to completely snowball through with one successful push. I mean, it would be crazy if it didn't operate like this, as it could lead to 20-second games where the blue team consists entirely of invisible spies or bonk scouts who flank past just to instantly backcap. I mean, that'd be totally ridiculous, right? Well, that's actually how Steel flips attack defend entirely on its head, because as the blue team, you can simply skip straight past points A, B, C, and D to instantly win the game by capping the last point as soon as the round starts. Now I wouldn't blame you if you're sitting there thinking, wow, elmaxo, this sounds really fucking stupid, because if we apply this variation to any other attack defend map, it simply wouldn't function. So what makes Steel so different? Well, let's just hold that idea for one moment and run you through what a last point rush looks like on Steel, and why it isn't necessarily a great idea. Let's imagine you're on blue, and you're feeling like playing a bit of soldier to execute this strategy. You want to have the ability to both move around a bit and actually defend yourself from any enemies who might get in your way. That's a pretty good choice, so let's turn left and head towards B, which is the only way we can access point E at this stage in the game. So the first obstacle we'll have to overcome is dealing with any smart thinking enemies on the red team who decide to set up on B to prevent any smartasses like you from attempting a backcap. This is a fairly common strategy for the red team to execute in not only casual play but competitive too, where teams will sometimes opt to give up point A entirely so they can direct all of their resource towards B, which is considerably easier to defend. But anyway, let's say there were just a couple enemies and you managed to deal with them. But nice job, boss. Let's keep going. You'll next want to head up through this area, which is called Beck, and after that, you'll come into contact with the fabled point E. Now, if you have a functioning pair of eyes, you might notice a bit of a glaring problem here, and that's the slight jump you'll have to make to actually get onto the point itself. This gap outright prevents both Heavy and Sniper from capping the point, and requires a decently tough jump from Spy and Medic, who can barely make the distance with their higher movement speeds. But hey, luckily for us, you pick Soldier, meaning you can simply jump across and start capping. But that leads us to the next problem, as if you decide to make this venture as a lone wolf, it will take you a whopping 70 whole seconds to actually cap the damn point. And on top of that, the enemy has a spawn door right there, a couple of windows they can harass you from up top, and if they're feeling little cheeky, they can exit through their B spawn and come up through Beck the way you did, just to take you by surprise. So yeah, the reason this map isn't utterly broken as a concept is because getting that game-winning capture is pretty fucking hard to do fresh out the gate. As just because you have the ability to backcap, it doesn't necessarily mean you should try it, or that it is particularly easy to do. Now this scenario actually does become somewhat viable once you have a fully coordinated team, but I want to avoid that for now, and instead talk about how the rest of the map functions. If we take a look at how Steel is structured, we'll see that there are 5 capture points. Now unlike these other attack defend maps, capture points serve a vastly different function, as rather than being barriers which a team must capture to progress through the game, the points on Steel instead provide the blue team with a variety of benefits which make it easier to capture that final point E. For instance, capturing point A opens up 2 doorways for the blue team, one which leads you down a corridor towards B, and another door located right next to the point which opens up the entire map for you. This creates a new pathway to capture point E from, and also provides you with a really powerful flank route which takes you straight to red team's backline on point, which is perfect for spies or anyone else fond of some tomfoolery. Or for another example, let's take a look at point D, which provides you with arguably the strongest benefit out of them all. If we take a look at red's second spawn, you can see that the left door takes you to point C, the right door takes you to point D, and this bottom section gives you a quick way to access point E in case of any backcaps. However, if the blue team manages to capture point D successfully, one of the benefits they gain is that the red team's really convenient doorway that leads them straight to point E is locked entirely, meaning they have to make a significant detour if they want to have any chance at defending the point E. I tend to find that if the blue team manages to capture point D, it is pretty rare that red team is able to come back and successfully defend, as the long respawn timer paired with that extra detour makes it really challenging to hold off the blue team. The other way you can think of how the points function on Steel is like a probability slider, which slowly increases with the more caps you get. You'll probably start out at something quite low, like maybe a 20% chance of successfully capping E without any other point. But as you continue to progress through the map, this slowly rises more and more as you gain more and more benefits to something like a 90% chance of successfully capping E once you have gotten D. That's basically how Steel manages to balance itself really well around this seemingly broken concept, as by opting to give points situational benefits rather than making them outright compulsory to win the game, you provide the blue team with a lot more freedom and capacity to strategize. Now before I tell you about why I think Steel is such a great map, I was actually lucky enough to talk a bit about it with one of TF2's most legendary mappers, Crash, who if you somehow don't know is responsible for maps like Moss Rock, Probed, and for any veterans out there, Trainsaw Laser, which really takes me back when I think about it. Anyway, Crash also shares a love for this map, as he finds that Steel has a really interesting layout that no other map can be compared to. You get a lot of formulaic maps in the game, and Steel is one that breaks the mold. On top of that, Crash also really likes how Steel promotes a sense of choice, as you are presented with a lot of options, which can spread players out a bit, but they give you a ton of ways to play the map. Spy always has a long route to get around, a big investment of time, but often gives you a big advantage. So yeah, that's right, it's not just your crazy uncle elmaxo who thinks this map is awesome, but veteran community figures too. I'm going to bring up a few other points that Crash made about the map later on, but for now, I've left his YouTube channel below, which I would highly recommend for anyone looking to get into mapping. But anyway, on to the reasons why I think Steel is the best map in TF2. And that all starts with something I have been alluding to throughout this video, and that's strategy. Let's get something straight very quickly. Steel demands more strategy than any other map in the game by a long shot. And I'm willing to defend this statement to the death, because no other game mode can even try to compete with how non-linear Steel is. I mean, sure, you could stay together as a full team, cap each point in succession with coordinated uber pushes until you make it all the way to E, and finally win the game. I'm not going to stop you, as that is probably the most obvious and direct way of securing a reliable victory. But think of this, what if after capping point A, you and your team didn't rush straight down that hallway towards B, and instead orchestrated a full team flank through this other door which opened up to completely take the enemy team off guard? Or what if we instead send a small group down towards B to bait the enemy into thinking we're going to push that point, and instead use that time window to establish a teleporter and lobby to prepare for a coordinated full team back cap? Seriously, the plethora of flank routes and general openness of the map makes it ripe for innovation, as there are limitless possibilities in how you can approach winning the game. I think one of the most underutilized elements of Steel is the power of baiting a back cap, as by playing something like Bonk Scout and applying just that little bit of pressure to point E, you can force the red team to split their defensive hold by sending a small group to deal with you and your back capping shenanigans, which in turn makes for an easier push for your team on the front line. And I mean, if no one comes to deal with you, you can just wait the full 46.6 seconds and cap the point to win the game that way. That works too. Something that often flies under people's radar when assessing a map is the viability of each class, which I think is something Steel has managed to balance really nicely. One of my greatest criticisms of a game mode like Attack Defend or Payload is that some classes just feel outright weaker than others. An example which springs to mind is Scout on Payload Offense, who can be entirely shut down by one well-placed sentry which overlooks both the cart and any flank routes. Now I know there needs to be some room for counter picking and a place for generalists and specialists, but personally, I like the idea of each class having a balanced role within the team, and that's something Steel executes well. Scout can always pressure the red team with his ability to backcap and can roam along the flank routes to pick off unsuspecting enemies. Soldier is just good, it's Soldier. Pyro meshes really well with more coordinated teams, they can roam the flanks like Scout, and also has that nutty environmental kill potential. Demo absolutely dominates in the more choke heavy sections and is great for preventing backcaps. Heavy can catch off enemies around corners in areas like Beck, and does a great job at both defending and attacking point E due to its emphasis on mid-range combat. Engineer has an absolute field day on this map as there are some great spots for holding defensively, as well as room for some cheeky teleporters on offense when coordinating backcaps. Medic is Medic. Sniper has a few deadly sightlines, but for the most part, he can't shut down a server due to those more claustrophobic indoor sections. And finally, Spy also really prospers on this map due to the plethora of flank routes, which he can use to destroy the backline on both offense and defense. I mean, there is a reason this map is played in Highlander, as it does accommodate nicely for every class in the game, as well as having all that fun strategy stuff going on. Something that has always fascinated me about maps since I started playing TF2 is getting to places I probably shouldn't be in. And luckily for us, Steel has a ton, which are like borderline game breaking. First up is this neat little spot you can perch yourself on, which is directly above the doorway leading to A. For something like Soldier, Demo, or even Scout, you can look to pick up some cheap kills from here. Next up is this genuinely criminal position above the doorway leading to B, where just like the last spot, you can get some really easy picks. Now if we drop down and enter the hallway, the next position is perched up on this light in this little area. It serves a similar function to the last one, but given you're closer to your enemies, you can inflict more damage with your rockets or stickies. At the B spawn door, you can get yourself into the rafters, which could be handy for spawn camping as Soldier, so your team can push onto point. Just before Beck is this weird one. I don't know, I feel like it has some good potential, but I'm yet to make it work, so give it a shot. On point C, there is this cheeky little angle in the roof, which is handy for defending the point. On this next one, I thought I broke the game for a second, but unfortunately, you can't actually get a teleporter on here, only a sentry or a dispenser if you want one for some reason. You can, however, position yourself on this ledge above the C spawn door, which is great for spawn camping. There's also some weird spots around the red hall spawnway. I've never made them work really, but I think there is some potential here too. On D, you can get yourself up on this fencing, which is a nice spot if your enemies are pushing from elbow to get to D. There's also a good position up here to counter any cheeky attackers who are trying to flank behind your team through A. And finally, it's pretty common knowledge, but there are a few spots around the cliff at E where you can sit safely instead of falling to your inevitable death. Actually, wait, no, there is technically one more spot, but I think it's banned in competitive and for good reason. Oh god, fuck no, I hear them coming. You need to run. You need to run now. These bitches love truck gang. Oh, and don't know when fucking with them truck boys, you gon' get fucked over. High on dozen Volvos. These trucks love cheap Sosa. Hit him with that chopper. Now that boy slumped over. Truck gang. There are a few other smaller things to talk about Steel, like its potential for memorable storytelling and how its unique design plays into that. Its aesthetic of being like an industrial hidden base with like a rocket. That's pretty awesome. And god, I could talk more about why I love this variation of Attack Defend and why we need some more maps like it. But there are some problems with the map I need to address, starting with the most common complaint people have, and that's how goddamn confusing this thing is. Now, to be honest with you, it should be no surprise that a map with 5 control points is probably going to be a little convoluted, but still really takes the cake as TF2's most confusing map. For a first time player, these super cool and powerful flank routes which open up the map over time just add unnecessary layers of complexity, making it easy to get lost and for players to be put off by the map. The signs which are supposed to guide people don't seem to be doing a great job, as every time I nominate this map on something like Uncletopia, it's pretty much guaranteed at least one person will complain about how they have no idea where they are going in this maze of a map.
As soon as I saw that fucking whatever this shit map is, you're on the spot, sir.
The only other piece of official material which Valve has released to teach players about this map is this really weird and convoluted video that doesn't do a good job of explaining anything really, meaning new players kinda just disregard this hidden gem of a map without much thought. I do have a couple of counters to this point though, starting with the unfortunate truth that Steel is always going to be harder to pick up, because it is one of the only non-linear maps in the entire game. I don't think that is necessarily to its detriment either, it's just because something has a high skill floor, it doesn't automatically make it bad. I mean, just look at TF2 for God's sake. You're undoubtedly going to spend your first couple hundred hours in this game getting relentlessly stomped before you begin to understand how everything works, just as it will take several rounds of steel to understand its intricacies and how it functions too. This is also something Crash highlighted to me, meaning that steel can be a bit overwhelming, as it's definitely a map with a learning curve. But once you're past that point, I think it's a lot of fun and has a lot of interesting routes to choose from, which is something I entirely agree with. One of the biggest downsides of Attack Defend as a game mode is how seemingly every map has an excessive amount of choke points. And whilst I think Steel does a better job of balancing around it due to the plethora of flank routes, there are some areas which can be a little frustrating to maneuver around in. Positions on the map such as Beck, Lobby, and Red's second spawn can be quite scary to move through at times due to how claustrophobic they feel, meaning classes like Soldier and Demo Man can really steamroll their way through some of these areas with some well-placed rockets or stickies.
I like the layout of Steel, I like the concept of Steel, but I think it suffers from something similar to Dust Bowl. The hallways, man, they're just too narrow. Give me some room.
Another criticism which follows on from this is that Steel doesn't leave as much room for insane movement like an Upward or Badwater does. Don't get me wrong, there's room to experiment on points A through C. Once you are forced into those indoor sections for D and E, you do lose a lot of that verticality which makes rocket jumping so fun. Past that though, I can't really see too many other flaws in its designs, as I do believe it is a very well balanced map. Oh, sorry, one sec, just gotta take this real quick. Hello? Oh, wait, Delfy, no, it's elmaxo. You still want to show me? Right, I mean, I guess we could give it a go. Try now. Come in here.
Oh, hey.
Come in here, come in.
Hey.
Get in and hide here. And then backstab people as they come through. Oh no! No, there's no spy here, just leave. Go on. You'll be on your way.
Yes.
Get on your way. Unclick, you're fine, you're fine.
Being a virgin.
Get through, you can make it. And just stand next to Spencer. Stand next to Spencer.
It's me, I'm Maxo. It's me, I'm Maxo.
Hey! Yeah, look, I did have a slight moral conundrum about showing this off or not, but I figure I may as well generate some attention towards it so it hopefully gets patched, but it is TF2, so sorry if that causes some unintended harm. But anyway, if there's one clear takeaway from this video, it would be that you need to give Steel another shot the next time it comes into rotation. I understand it has a sharp learning curve compared to the other maps in TF2, and you'll probably get yourself lost on it a fair few times, but if you manage to push through, I promise you that this map is so incredibly rewarding once you master it. That's all from me. This video was a massive project which had like 9,000 words in the script at one stage, so if you do want to support the channel, my Patreon is down below. Other than that though, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.